And then we broke our string of misery. And potentially, well, my second favorite thing that I saw out of both programs, Wednesday and Friday, and my first favorite match, only favorite match, was Bryan Danielson and Timothy Thatcher. And again, at least they're learning, because what did we see at 9 o'clock Eastern, top of the hour, Bryan Danielson making his entrance, the biggest star on this particular 2-hour program. So that might hook somebody. And obviously the story again is Thatcher's another one of the guys that MJF is trying to get to beat and hurt and put out of commission Bryan Danielson before the pay-per-view match where he challenges MJF for the title. But again, from the bell on this one, the professionalism of the work, the approach, the presentation was 10 levels above anything else so far on the program. Both these guys know what they're doing. They've had the wrestling, they had the striking, they had the little things, the timing and the pace. It was an athletic contest. Thatcher is a heel, but he's a wrestling heel where it's not like the Sheik. He's pulling a fucking knife out of his trunks, or he's carving somebody up, or he's hitting you over the head with a chair, he's drinking your bones or eating your blood. He's an old-fashioned wrestling heel where he has the talent, but you can tell he's also a salty old prick. And I love the way he looks older than he has to look older than he is. He can't chronologically be as old as he looks, and that's refreshing. He looks like Dory Funk Jr. if Dory had great facials. The old-time wrestler's body, no knee pads, the way he works, the tightness of his holes and the way he goes in and out of them. And, again, this was a wrestling match, and they didn't have fucking furniture, and they didn't have goddamn, the out in the crowd and the goddamn multiple run-ins and all this fucking tomfoolishness. It was an athletic contest and a wrestling match that built, and you could get into it. And Thatcher's the heel and Danielson's a baby face. We want to see him succeed. Thatcher goes for the double arm. Danielson fights out. Thatcher back up for the regular suplex. Danielson fights out. Danielson hits the missile drop kick, but sells the shoulder that Thatcher's been working on when he lands. They traded the European uppercuts, which, again, Thatcher reminds me of Dory. Was Dory the first one doing those? Was it the influence of guys like maybe Ted Heath or John Foley, those guys that worked from England, that worked Texas in the 60s when Dory was breaking in?
I don't know, but I've actually always hated them.
Really? Why?
I've never ever liked them. I always thought they looked like crap when Dory Funk Jr. did them. I've never liked anyone else doing them.
Billy Robinson's
looked the best, probably, now that I'm thinking about it.
They may not have felt the best. I always thought I was impressed by them because it looked like a fucking shoot, and you could hear it.
If you watch wrestling with someone who's not a wrestling fan and someone does that, they can't understand what just happened because they just watched it. It doesn't make sense. I think it's one of the worst things that people do in their matches. Well, I can see that, but if think about this, Terry Funk threw one of the best punches in the wrestling business. Dory never threw a punch, really. Dory always hit because that was something that those technical heels would do because it was a legal blow in wrestling rather than a closed fist, but also because it came up out of nowhere. It was kind of a dirty thing subliminally to the people. I don't know. But anyway, they did them well here. It's better than the goddamn little flipper forearms that you see from all these guys now where they just throw it to the side of your neck. And in the contest at the opening between Johnny Scissorhands and Hangnail, they laid those in where you could hear them a little bit, but most of the time those guys are just pissy. Anyway, they had some wrestling exchanges. They squashed the referee in the corner, and here's the one thing I didn't like, and you tell me what you think. They're having this match where they're going back and forth, and they're getting some 2 counts. And then Danielson gets the sleeper, and they squash the referee in the corner, and the ref is down, and here comes MJF down the ramp, putting the ring on. You know, oh, this is going to be easy. And suddenly, in a hoodie, comes Take a Shit and tackles him down on the floor and just fights him back down the entryway, and they're gone. And then they're still having the match. And Thatcher gets a Fujiwara armbar, and Danielson gets the rope break. But now the fans are flat and the referee's back up. So I know in Tony's Adderall prescription, it says, oh, I've got to involve MJF some kind of way because that's the story. And I want to push old Take, and he's kind of taken up for MJF last week, or not MJF, but Danielson last week. So I'll continue that. But what he did, it was an unnecessary distraction from the match. At that point, just to bump the referee, just to do that spot, neither one of them ever got in the ring, but it took all the fans in the arena's attention and a lot of the TV viewers' attention to that and down the aisleway. And then they were having a great match and they were building some shit, but now they got to fucking, in effect, start from scratch. Thatcher has the armbar and Danielson gets a rope break, but they could have obviously going from, oh my God, chaos on the floor to a submission hold. The movement is lessened. They distracted there. And then Danielson's immediately going home. He hits a German suplex and the big bukkake knee and gets the 1, 2, 3. And yes, the people pop because they wanted to see him win, but it was an unnecessary distraction right at the fucking finish. And I don't see why. Well, hold on, and I'll let you say that. I don't see why they couldn't have finished their match like they did, but have Danielson still selling the effects of what he'd been through long enough for MJF to come down and do the same thing and Take a Shit to fucking tackle him, and off they go because of what was going to happen next. Now go ahead.
You know, the other interesting thing about all of this, if you stop and think about it, how many ref bumps have there ever been in AEW?
Well, you know what?
They never do
I don't
them.
remember one.
They never do them. Never.
So they pick, of all times, they pick this to do that instead of something meaningful to happen.
Does it feel to you like the MJF Danielson feud is off somehow? I mean, I know you're not a fan of him. I actually like him so far, but they're cramming Takeshita into the middle of this thing. Danielson's doing what every MJF opponent does and going through the gauntlet of people that he finds.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just feels like it should just kind of be, I hate you, you hate me, let's do promos week after week, as opposed to everything else. It just feels like the feud doesn't mean as much today as it did a few weeks ago. To me, what do you think?
Well, after what I saw next, nothing means as much. The food doesn't taste as good. The sunlight isn't as bright. Because now MJF, the one guy that ought to be protected, they're in the back of the arena, him and Take, and they're having the big fight. And then a bunch of people run in and pull them apart. And there's 14 people pulling them apart, and they're yelling and screaming. And suddenly here comes Renee Moxley Good in the middle, literally in the middle of all of them, in the middle of the two pulled apart bunches with a microphone, and everybody, she gets their attention by saying, listen up. And everybody stops to listen. And she says, per Tony Khan, next week, it's going to be MJF versus Take a Shit. But I'm not, again, against the match, but the way it was done was so visually and obviously phony. And then everybody starts yelling again after they listen to her.
I think they aired that early. I think that pre-tape aired earlier than it was supposed to.
I don't know what to tell you.
Are they jamming Renee Moxley Good into every segment? It feels like now they're trying to justify her contract because she's talking more than any other, than Dasha, than Shivani. Shivani doesn't say anything. He hands the mic over and walks away. Then the other one whose name I'm forgetting right now. None of them really say anything. They just hold the mic.
Officer Bar Brady.
Officer Bar Brady was the worst.
She'd be a welcome replacement for Bar Brady. But yes, because again,
she's not Mean Gene. I think that's the one thing a lot of people have to understand. She's not Mean Gene. Fans don't like her the way they like Mean Gene. Stop pretending she's a bigger personality than she is.
That's the thing. She did, a real promotion interview fucking show for a while. And so they think that she's Mike Wallace. But anyway, it was a phony presentation of this, that all these people, this massive fight, and suddenly they're being pulled apart and they're going to stop and listen to the proclamation of, the plumber's wife. And anyway, I'm sure MJF obviously will beat Old Take next week. But again, it's muddling the water somewhat. And then the next thing you saw after the break was MJF, and he seemed to have gotten himself together.
Yeah, this is the one I meant. They played this one when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, either case, either this one was later, the other one was early, because that's the thing. Now MJF comes in the back like after a commercial break, and his hair's combed, and he doesn't seem to be flustered in any way, besides the fact that he's trying to motivate Rush by giving him a briefcase full of cash to fuck up Danielson next week. And he says there's 5 more of these where that came from. So for once, there's a heel doing heel things, but it was right after he just had a pull apart with the fucking rising star while he's the world champion about to face the... Okay, we're getting complicated. Yeah. Yes, we are.
Rush does Andrade better than Andrade ever did. Hey, let me ask you this. What do you do with Thatcher? Do you bring him back? Do you sign him? Is this someone that you think you should have on the roster?
I can't imagine why they wouldn't sign this guy with all these other indie-rific fucking sensations. This is from the company that once had Marco Stunt under contract. If they've got a chance to give Timothy Thatcher a job, I would suggest highly they do it. He might be able to teach some other people something around there.